SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Buy or sell at Mid-Delta's auction on Friday, October 17th. Tractors, combines, and more with live online bidding at mdauction.com. Call 662-299-2414. Mid-Delta Auction, across from Cannon Motors.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
I had to plug in the address in the GPS to figure out where to go today. I've been on the road a bit, but we're all buckled in for this Friday here. The Element Wealth Studio, it's Super Talk headquarters. But we're back on the road again next week. As you know, it's Cruising the Coast week. We're going to be there next Tuesday, getting revved up. We'll be with Coastal Mississippi Tourism in Moss Point on Tuesday, on the Biloxi Town Green on Wednesday. So, the travel continues. The show is on the road, as they say. Well, what about this cringe-worthy online call the Democrats held? Geez, was that weird or what? I don't know if you saw that. Hakeem Jeffries and others discussing the shutdown and the Democrat position. They have some technical problems. They're just afloat at sea without a paddle right now. You
talking about their shutdown live stream?
Yeah, that deal. You saw that?
Oh, yeah, the one that maxed out at like 800 viewers.
Exactly. But wasn't somebody participating that's some big social media star with like 14 million followers? I don't even know who these people are. I don't keep up with all that stuff. As you know, I don't find it of interest. But there were some problems. There's like, hello, can you hear me? Stuff going on, and they were into all these dumb chants and stuff. And once again, they point the finger at the billionaires while they're using the technology they created. I can't emphasize that enough. I know I beat that horse to death. I just find it so rich. Oh, wait, you're mad about the people that created the stuff you're using to spew this nonsensical rhetoric.
It's like I've said several times, they have no shame.
Zero. Just unbelievable that sort of stuff's going on. So, both sides, of course, looking for their respective agendas. The Republicans just want to keep everything as is and really just fund the government for a short period of time. And they've all said, hey, we're willing to talk about some of these health care provisions that were amended in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I think it's now called the Working Families Tax Act, if I'm not mistaken. They've tried to rebrand it. We're willing to talk about it, but you got to open the government up first. In the meantime, Russ Vought, he's the Office of Management and Budget Director for the White House. Man, he's loving this, isn't he? He's got a plan. He is largely credited, to some degree at least, with the Project 2025 agenda, which does incorporate significant adjustments to the size and scope of government. And so the Democrats have handed the keys to the kingdom, as they say, to the president and his team. But it's Russ Vought, the OMB guy. He's like the architect of what life will look like in federal government land during the shutdown, with the hopes, the plan of permanently dismissing a large number of federal employees, up to 700,000. Now, you get into this debate, I've had it on social media, Rhino, about the essential versus non-essential, and you get these diatribes from people about, well, it's really essential, but not essential. Like, dude, you're missing the whole damn point here, aren't you? You're missing the big picture.
Welcome to trying to argue with the idiotic left.
It's like
they're either intentionally obtuse or willfully ignorant.
I just don't know. But the important takeaway here that I think is being missed is that it does provide the opportunity to step back and really do a thorough analysis of the size and scope of federal government, and in particular the federal workforce, and say, maybe we don't need to be spending money on that. Now, I got to tell you that this morning I caught an interview with the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Labor. That would be Lori Chavez DeRimmer. She was sworn in March 11th, 2025. And she was talking about various programs that are in jeopardy, and she's blaming the Democrats for shutting down the government, and is lobbying, obviously, and championing the need to reopen the government to continue these programs. So, I don't want to question the president's pick here, although, when she was nominated, we said something about it, and that's just based on her history. Her background was concerning to me. But I started thinking about it, guys. Do we need a Department of Labor? Well, what do they do exactly? Can you tell me what they do? Now, I know what they say they do, but can you tell me, can you pinpoint any specific, tangible, quantifiable value? And here's what she was talking about, was apprenticeship programs. And, anytime I hear programs, I always perk up, because that's just government money going to some government purpose, and I just always question the value of those efforts. But she was talking about apprenticeship programs and how it's important that we reskill. It's, the old language. It's boilerplate. We reskill, upskill the labor force. But I had to stop and think, why the heck do we have a Department of Labor? Why is that something that needs to exist at the federal level? Can that not just be handled, what little there is to handle there, honestly, at the state level? Why do we have to have a federal bureaucracy? And I'm not just picking on the Department of Labor. They're like, 400 executive branch agencies or some insane number like that. There are 2.2 million civilian employees in the executive branch. This excludes, just want to be clear, civilian. So we're not talking about the military. We're not talking about the United States Postal Service. That's actually not part of the executive branch. We're talking about just this myriad of agencies, and it's just sprouted, blossomed, grown, expanded through the years. 400 some agencies, 2.2 million employees at an annual cost of $359 billion a year. Just the civilian workforce. This is how upside down our finances are. Fire every one of them. Shut every agency down. We still have a $1.8 trillion deficit. That's how upside down things are. But I know this is a duly created agency of the federal government, and it's not being disrespectful here to Secretary DeRimmer, but it's just something that caused me to think, why do we have a Department of Labor? What the heck do they do? And why do we need these programs?
If I'm not mistaken, it used to be Department of Commerce and Labor.
Oh, so it was combined? Because we
no,
do.
It was one cabinet position, and then it got split into two cabinet positions.
So expansion of government, essentially. And I could be persuaded otherwise, but just at first glance and hearing her interview this morning, talking about apprenticeship programs, I just got to tell you, is that a role for the federal government? Because I'm thinking about the various workforce development initiatives and organizations we have within the state of Mississippi here, which I think do great work. Is there not some overlap there? But shouldn't that be handled at the state level because isn't that a principal tenet of conservatism that government functions best when it's closest to the people being governed? And I worry about a one-size-fits-all strategy coming out of Washington for something like apprenticeship programs throughout the country. And you know that there are NGOs and all kinds of other people that are saying, how can I get money from the federal government to stick in my pocket? And I'm going to tell them, look, I'm training these people. But that doesn't happen, right?
No.
We're going to take a break right now. We're in the Element Wealth studio. Segment after the next, it's Secretary of State Michael Waston, and then Jill Sanchez, first time on MidDays from SuperTalk Mississippi News, will give us a rundown of the news from across our state. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So, on the C Spire text line, there's a question. So, recent news is saying plans to cut 16,000 federal jobs. You're saying up to 700,000. Would love for you to go into more details on this. So, approximately 750,000 are expected to be furloughed. It's temporary, essentially. But the question is...
I thought the furlough number was a lot bigger than that.
750 is what I've seen. Well, it could be. There are two, but I think maybe you're getting into once again, the distinction between the essential and the non-essential. But the reports I'm reading, it's a bunch. 2.2 million is the total civilian workforce. Many, of course, are working without pay at this point. TSA, for example. But Russ Vought is, I think you pronounce it Vogt, does he not? He, V-O-U-G-H-T. He's the guy that says, I think a lot of these could be eliminated on a permanent basis. And he issued a memo last week threatening mass firings in the federal workforce in the event of a shutdown. So firings is different than furlough. And that's what he says. So I guess the question is, and I know you're looking at it, how many right now are furloughed, meaning they're temporarily dismissed from their jobs and not getting paid? That's the question. So a lot of them are starting to speak up. They're mad. I don't think they've missed a paycheck yet. I think it's another one that's coming up that they would actually miss, even if the government.
Yeah, Polymarket was saying on the 1st, 750,000 employees to be furloughed today, and then yesterday, 1,500,000 U.S. government employees have been furloughed since yesterday's shutdown. Okay,
so it's increased. It started out as the SEB, so my data's a little dated. So we started out at 750K, and now we're up to 1,500,000. is what you're seeing there. All right. So folks are getting upset, worried about their jobs, and then they're worried about, are they going to miss a paycheck? That's the other thing that I have seen. And I'm not sure what the pay cycle is. I think it is, I don't know if it's semi-weekly or semi-monthly or bi-weekly. I think it's semi-monthly, if I'm not mistaken. I know you're looking that up, the federal government. So, but there are concerns about perhaps the paycheck on the 15th.
Bi-weekly.
It is bi-weekly. Okay. So I said it right the first time. All right. So there's one coming up that they're concerned about missing. Even though they're going to get back pay, they wouldn't get it on that date, on the normal payroll date. They'd have to wait to receive it on the next payroll, is what I saw. That even if the government reopened, there would be problems getting everything restored and reinstated and making that payroll. So, but Russell Vogt has actually talked about significant reduction in force. And I've seen figures up to 750,000, just people that he says we don't need. Now, maybe that's coming from what's in the Project 2025 documents, but there's no doubt that he is he's ready to go, man. He's kind of been waiting for this his whole life. This strategy to let a bunch of people go. It's just hard to at this point estimate. So the 16,000, I think the figure that you got there comes from a Supreme Court ruling in April where they halted, the high court, the Supreme Court halted an order by a lower court judge requiring the Trump administration rehire about 16,000 fired probationary employees. That may be where the 16K from our text line's coming from. But I certainly haven't seen any news reports, Rhino, of cutting 16,000 jobs. I haven't seen that. Everything I've seen has been significantly more.
That may just be the number that is available to be let go immediately, because I have seen discussions about the timeline for permanent firing of the federal employees, and it's not anything that can be done immediately during the shutdown. There's a certain period of time that has to pass in the shutdown for it to be an actionable thing.
There's a process involved in that could certainly slow it down, but the OMB Secretary Vaught is playing hardball. There ain't no doubt about that. Late Thursday, Trump, who posted a video depicting Vaught as the Grim Reaper wearing a hood and holding, how do you pronounce it, scythe? Or
scythe?
Scythe. S-C-Y-T-H-E, right? Scythe. Okay, so the C is soft there, not hard. Got you. I don't say that word a lot, so we'll see. Now, one of the things that I applaud that I sure do wish we could address here in the state of Mississippi is that the Trump administration is halting about $2.1 billion in infrastructure projects to the windy city of Chicago to make sure that, quote, funding is not flowing via race-based contracting, something we've talked about that occurs in the city in which we are seated right now, the capital city of Mississippi, Jackson. It's exactly how procurement works. And I've called upon the legislature to prohibit such procurement practices for years, and we can't get that passed. Hey, legislature, lieutenant governor, and I know the governor would support this. I don't know about the lieutenant governor. And I've spoken to the Speaker of the House about this. There was legislation last year. I'll give props to Senator Angela Hill. You remember we talked about that. It went into Senator David Parker's committee, and he pocket vetoed it, and it would have prohibited this practice I'm calling on the legislature. Let's get this done. Here's the president saying, we're not sending you any money, Chicago, because it turns out you award contracts not to the bidder, the supplier, the vendor, the service provider that offers the best value for the taxpayers, but rather you look on a more priority basis at the race of the contractor. But you know that doesn't happen. We don't discriminate in this country, right, Rhino? No. We don't do that. It's happening every day in this country. And here you got a major city, but they're not alone. We've discussed this right here in the city of Jackson. This occurs, and it needs to end. I personally believe we can't fix Jackson until we end this practice. And I was a bit disappointed in my good friend, the mayor of the city of Jackson, John Horn, former state senator, who, when I asked him about that, he didn't seem to be too inclined to support changing that policy. So I'm calling on the legislature to just ban it in the state of Mississippi. Honestly, I don't know if this goes on in other states, in other cities within our state. I'm not familiar with all the procurement practices in the other cities. I suspect it does. I know that in the city of Jackson, I have personally experienced it. I know what happens. I have dealt with it in Memphis, in New Orleans, in Birmingham, in Houston. All those cities, no surprise, run by Democrats. And such policies are prominent in their procurement processing. It's more important than anything, honestly, to them. Let's make sure we award this to a minority. Forget about whether or not that's the best deal for the taxpayers. That's irrelevant. What matters is that our money is going to a minority, and we can run around in the next election cycle and hold all that up, right? Look what I did for the minority vendors. I funneled this money to them. Well, the Trump administration, kudos to them, is saying, we ain't doing that anymore with you, Chicago. We're going to send you money. You're going to make sure that it is handled with good fiduciary principles, not awarding contracts on the basis of race primarily, and everything else is very secondary. That's wrong. We're coming right back with the Secretary of State, Michael Watson. Stay with us.
Set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
The hurt doesn't show, but the pain still grows. Some stranger to you and me.
Little Phil Collins bumping us into this segment on Middays. Appreciate that, Rhino. We welcome now the Secretary of State of the great state of Mississippi, Michael Watson. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Always a pleasure, and I know we were here to talk about elections, but I couldn't help but share this with you.
Yeah.
Working on a constituent issue with the Department of Treasury, so I emailed this morning for a heads up and kind of a, hey, give me what's going on. And I get an email back that says I'm out of the office for the foreseeable future because Senate Democrats voted to block the clean federal funding bill. How about that?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. There's some people that relish that opportunity to kind of stick your nose in that and say, yeah, because of the furloughs, I can't help you. Oh, my gosh. Well, you heard us. We've been talking about it.
I have, yeah, it's unfortunate. But more importantly, look, elections. This is why they have consequences, and I think it's really important that we focus on that here in Mississippi. We've got elections coming up this fall, as you well know, some that are scheduled, some that are special. So I wanted to make sure folks understood the voter registration deadline is Monday, October 6th. And there's some confusion here, Gerard, on regularly scheduled elections. So the folks that have school board elections, et cetera, your clerk's office will be open on Saturday for voter registration. But if it's a special election, say, for instance, a Senate district up in DeSoto or Hattiesburg, they do not have to be open, and this is by statute. So I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that. Call your clerk's office if you're not sure to make sure you can get registered to vote. And then I think this is a note that I want to make sure people understood. We talk a lot about election integrity, making sure the process is clean and fair and just.
Sure.
Sometimes we forget to mention our efforts with voter registration, and I want to point that out. We've helped register over 382,000 people since we took office here.
Wow.
In Secretary of State's office. So roughly, north of 60,000 a year, and that's a big number. Really proud of that. So I wanted people to make sure they understood. Not only do we care about the integrity, but we also care about making sure folks know that it's easy to vote in Mississippi.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, of course, you and I have talked about this many times. We cherish the fact that we are able, as a state, to conduct elections and build a policy and law around elections as we see fit. We have some degree of policy that comes down from the federal government, but in general, we create the environment as we see fit, which is based on the people we elect into office, right, that create these laws, and then such as yourself that is involved in some of the policy and regulation and the execution of that law that comes out of the Capitol. We got to protect that, do we not, Mr. Secretary?
1,000%. And Gerard, you and I had this conversation a few years ago when someone else was in the White House, and we saw this big push for H.R. 2, and basically it was the federalized takeover of elections at the state level, which we all screamed and hollered about.
Yeah,
we could be consistent with that. I don't care who's in the White House. The way the Constitution is written, the way the federal statutes are written, the way the state law is written, elections belong at the state level.
Yeah.
And, there are very few instances, you're right, where the federal government can have some interplay there without more congressional, work at the Capitol and passing different laws.
Yeah.
It is completely left to the states, in a sense, to run our elections here. And that's how we should, continue to move forward.
Yeah, and if you think about just the concept of federalism and states' rights and the 10th Amendment, I mean, this is core to it. This tops the list, does it not?
Absolutely. Again, we talk about this so much. If you can't control the elections process, I don't know what else is more important because depending on who gets elected and then some bad election laws pass and you can do things that you shouldn't be able to do, then you could change who's in office and change the policy. So it all comes down to elections.
Totally agree.
That's why we're really excited about the work we're doing.
Absolutely. So speaking of which, we got the legislative session, of course, 2026 kicks into gear right around the corner in a short 3 months here. What's on your radar in the Secretary of State's office that you'll be talking to the legislature about?
Yeah, I think one of the most important, Gerard, that we've been working on, we've got the funding. Thank the legislature for that, and we've got our contract in place. We're working on our new campaign finance reform package, and this is going to be a new system where folks can easily search and find out who's getting money from where, when they receive it, and you can kind of coordinate that with if a vote changes or if someone changes their position. Well, why? Well, let me go look at their campaign finance report, just in case. And one of the things that's so important to us is making sure that all of this is really happening electronically. And so we want our legislators to pass some legislation forcing electronic filing of all of these forms. We've run into a speed bump with that across the street, and I understand some folks are slow to change. I get it. But when we talk about transparency, this is one of the most important things to me. Again, elections, when we talk about the importance of elections, the second piece of that is campaign finance. If we can have a good, clear picture of how people are who's supporting who, how they're spending their dollars, and having an easily searchable way to do that. It's really important. So we're going to continue pushing on that. We'll have a few more pieces of election reform. I don't know how public this is, but we've actually started looking at the entire election code. We'll be setting up a study group here in the next few months, and our hope is there's so many disjointed pieces of that code, Gerard, that we want to make it clean, easily readable, again, so the common everyday Mississippi citizen can understand what the law says about elections. And that all of it flows together. And so that's a big project, something that's not going to happen this year, but something we're pushing forward to the future.
You're so right. The key, as you well know, and I know you're a champion of, is transparency, that the public loses trust when it can't get access to information.
1,000% again. And, you know, we've done a lot with our Elections 101 team where we're trying to educate Mississippians on the process. Well, when you educate them on the process, following that, they need to be able to find the data and the information to continue to educate themselves. And part of that is campaign finance reform. Part of that is making sure that the laws are easily understandable. So, again, everyday Mississippians can read it and say, oh, okay, that makes sense. I get it. Well, hey, my county or my city is not doing the correct thing. I'm going to call them out on it. Ultimately, that's where we want to go, and I think that's really how you get good government. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Turn our attention for a minute here to the national scene. The shutdown of the government, other than this email you got back from someone in the Treasury Department, is that affecting your office and your operations in any way? Absolutely not. And I think that's a funny thing. I saw something on X the other day. The lady said, you know, the only thing I noticed about a government shutdown was I couldn't get in the restroom in a federal park. It just goes to show, Gerard, we got to get back to the core functions, period. Totally agree. We were talking about that. I don't know how you feel, but I was talking about an interview I caught with the Secretary of Labor this morning, and it just caused me to stop and think, why do we have a Department of Labor? Do we need that anymore? I mean, I can't tell you exactly what they do. There's just so many things that we have no business doing, and you know, it's just, hey, let me grow the circle a little bit and pull some more folks in. Oh, and by the way, let's do this too, and then government just gets this behemoth that it's become, and we've got to have more folks focused on core functions. Get out of the rest. Totally agree, and hopefully we'll see some move in that direction, but at a minimum, we've been talking about it. When you have a shutdown like this, it does allow some analysis and some reflection and introspection, if you will, on what does this organization need to look like? Man, I can't agree more. And Russ Ault, just a fantastic individual, very smart. Yes. And I know that he's taken this opportunity to you know, and from the outset, this wasn't something that surprised them. The White House was sending this to heads of agencies saying, hey, who are the folks that, gosh, maybe we don't need? You know, and how do we trim down the fat? I think it's a good thing. It's going to be painful for some folks, and I get that. But at the same time, maybe something good comes out of this, and that's our hope. Well, you know, one of the problems is, and it's not unique to the federal government, it's just dang hard to terminate anybody that works in government. It is. It is. And you got the weeping and gnashing and wailing, especially from the left. And, you know, it's just common sense. And I think when Americans who have to pay their bills and have to go to work in the private sector understand that my job's not promised, I better bring some value. You know, let's turn that back to the government. What value are you bringing to the people of Mississippi and the people of our country? Totally agree. Secretary of State Michael Watson has been our guest on Middays. Appreciate the update on the voting and the election coming up, Mr. Secretary. We'll talk to you again soon. Election Day on November 4th. Let's go vote. Appreciate it. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
For a flipping good time. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
about me. Came a voice from the sky on that magical night. And in the colors of 1,000 sunsets, they traveled through the world on a silvery light. The people of the earth stood waiting, watching as the ships came one by one.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio.
Setting fire to the sky as they landed.
So the Dow, investors seem to be shrugging off the shutdown, Rhino. Look, you know what they care about? Profits. I know that's a tough thing for the left because they loathe profits, of course. But it's up 436 points right now. The NASDAQ 56 hit records yesterday. The NASDAQ and the S&P did. But the 10-year yield still 4.1%. That means that your mortgage rates really aren't changing, even though the Fed retracted the rate by a quarter point. And then the funny money is doing well, and that is largely because there was an announcement from Walmart, right? I think I caught that on the business channel on the way in this morning. Walmart is doing something that I think is going to get us to a point where you'll be able to use your funny money to buy your stuff at Walmart. You seeing something there? And I think that's what's driving it, but it's up, 122,000 at this moment of time. Yeah, Bitcoin 122 up 1777. You see anything on Walmart there? I heard that on the news this morning. It may be some preliminary plans.
I don't see anything really updated. I've seen a couple things from a few years ago where they were putting the Bitcoin kiosks in certain stores.
Okay.
But it was a limited run then, so maybe they're rolling it out across the country now.
Okay. Well, it sounds like that there are perhaps some talks underway to implement such a system. Also, I think a good point was made by the former governor of West Virginia that is a wealthy guy from the mining business, now a senator from West Virginia. You know what I'm talking about. His name escapes me right now, but he made the statement not so long ago that said, when Ma and Pa Kettle or something to that effect can go to the Walmart and buy their toothpaste and soap powder with Bitcoin, that's when it will become mainstream, and we'll really see it take off.
Joe Manchin?
Jim Justice.
Jim Justice.
You know what I'm talking about. Isn't that his name? Used to be the governor of West Virginia, and is now the senator from West Virginia. Took Manchin's spot, right? Isn't that him? Did I get that right? Yeah, that's it. Jim Justice, U.S. Senator. So he's the one that made sense. I mean, he's I think just a common sense individual, and that is common sense to me. When it's just transparent, easy, not intimidating, that the average person, including seniors in our country that maybe are a little less inclined to take on new stuff like this, I agree with him. On the C Spire text line, Matt in Burnsville says, with the shutdown, this is the perfect time to rethink what the role of government is. I would trim it down significantly. Hopefully that will happen. Ben from Madison says, y'all know this already, but one major reason the legislature won't touch the procurement process, I was talking about that in the segment prior to our interview with the secretary, is because many Republican legislators' wives have taken advantage of it. I actually don't think that's the reason, Ben. I'm just going to speak openly and freely here, Rhino. I did so yesterday to the chagrin of a few. By the way, I'm going to share with you, related to that, a video from Walter Williams that I'll ask you to play later, and that's just related to the subject matter we were discussing yesterday. But then here's the way stuff works, and I'm not trying to preach to you here whatsoever. I know you're probably well aware of this. Sometimes you just have personality conflicts in the legislature, and there's certain legislators that are kind of ostracized, and they can introduce legislation, and the fact that it has their name on it means it's in file 13 before anybody even opens it up. Am I speaking the truth here, Rhino?
Oh, yeah.
Because do you remember when we had Senator Parker on and I asked him about that? And he's like,
it's as cliquey as a high school.
Exactly. And he said, I wasn't aware of that. I was just blown away. It got assigned to your committee, sir. And you're not even familiar with this legislation because you looked at who authored it and just immediately decided, oh, yeah, we're not going to take that up. Is that not what happened?
Sure seems that way.
It's exactly what happened. So I think, unfortunately, the key there is we need some more sponsors of such legislation. But I think the bigger problem has been they're concerned about retribution, retaliation, backlash, condemnation, as you're a racist in the public square because you don't want to give preferential treatment to certain groups of people. Coming right back after Fox News.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
Once again, in the next segment, it's Jill Sanchez, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. Jill will keep us up to date with all the latest headlines and top stories the news department here at SuperTalk has been tracking. So we had a text on the C Spire text line. Tell us what's going on there with respect to the state Supreme Court ruling. Which way did they rule? I can't follow the text, and I haven't opened the article up yet, Rhino. That just released yesterday, right?
From what I understand, the Mississippi Supreme Court declined to take up or rehear, or however you say it, the landmark Katrina case with USAA, the U.S. United Services Automobile Association,
okay,
on a $10.5 million damages settlement.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. So, and what is this person saying? Our current insurance commissioner and 2 former governors wrote letters in favor of the insurance company. Do you know anything about that, Rhino?
I do not.
Okay. Yeah, I don't either. But that's just what somebody on the C Spire text line said. So we haven't verified that. We don't know for sure. But that's kind of interesting, no doubt. I'm going to send you a clip if I can find it now. It's Walter Williams. And he had some things to say that were consistent with some of the stuff we talked about yesterday. I'll get to it when I can run it down. But he's brilliant and is something we should pay attention to. And he's also something that can say stuff that perhaps is interpreted a little different than when we say it, just because of his race. He happens to be a black individual, and he kind of sees this the way we did, certainly me, as we talked about it yesterday. And he has a little different bent when it comes to those external that would tend to make an analysis of what is being talked about. When it comes from someone who looks like us, it immediately is considered racism. Of course, what's not considered racism in this country, that seems to be the mode we've been in for quite some time. But when the same message is being communicated by a black person, is that racism? I guess not, right? But in this particular case, if I just sent it to you, see if you can get it to work there. In this particular case, this is a black person that is delivering the same message that we did yesterday. Yeah, here we go. Listen up.
40% of black kids live in two-parent families. Now, back in 1925 in Harlem, 85% of black kids lived in two-parent families. In 1870 and 1880 in cities like Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia, you found numbers like 70 to 85% of black kids living in two-parent families. Matter of fact, illegitimacy rate among black teenagers in 1918 was less than that among white teenagers. Now, how do you explain that? Can you say that there was not as much racial discrimination in the United States in the late 1800s or the early 1900s? No, that doesn't cut water. That has nothing to do with racial discrimination.
Okay, so that's fairly consistent with what we were discussing yesterday. Of course, he's an economist, was an economist, passed away in 2020. Commentator, but he's an academic. He's brilliant. And I have always enjoyed his commentary, his analysis. And, you know, what you have to respect about him is that it's got to be difficult when he's pointing out problems within his own race within our country. And he's not afraid to do so. That's what needs to happen more. We need more Walter Williams, because that message is always viewed as racist when it comes from people that look like we do. And it's dismissed. And you're immediately just shouted down and condemned. It's kind of what happened to Charlie Kirk to a great extent. He would just speak the truth about a variety of topics that offended certain people, right? Made them mad, but he was telling the truth, exposing the truth, and engaging in civil conversation about it, and delivering the message in a respectful, courteous, and succinct manner. That's exactly what Walter Williams does here. But just, again, depending on what you look like is how it is received and perceived. So much respect for Walter Williams. We need more folks like that, no doubt. The insurance commissioner siding with big insurance say it ain't so. I got to tell you, guys, I don't know all the details here. And this person on the C Spire text line sent us, this looks like an AI report on the governor. Let's see, Governor Haley Barbour, Mike Cheney, the insurance commissioner. Let's see, sending these letters. I don't know the details, so I don't know if the ruling was right by the Supreme Court or not. I hesitate to offer an opinion on that because I'm just not familiar with that particular topic.
Cheney apparently argued that the amicus brief that he sent argued that the large punitive damage awards to USAA or from USAA, including attorney's fees, could harm the state's insurance market. Cheney contended that such awards hinder his ability to maintain an affordable and competitive property insurance market in Mississippi.
Okay. Well, that's probably true. It makes sense. So on the one hand, maybe you want to see these big awards and some restitution. On the other hand, you know when that happens, your rates are going up. Just simple as that. And so it's a conundrum. And it's a difficult scenario. And while we're talking about that, there are some concerns in the White House over this shutdown where the main sticking point again, I know you hear a lot about the illegals, but on getting health care, but that's honestly from an economic perspective, nothing compared to the subsidies, the enhanced subsidies in the ACA exchanges. So now there's some folks in the White House that are concerned about the expiration of these enhanced subsidies being attributed to Republicans and how that might play out in the midterms. So some of the president's advisors have privately acknowledged that this could be a problem. But Mr. Trump, of course, the president, has always said we'd like to repeal Obamacare and replace it with something better. But he's also said recently that, hey, until we find something better, we're going to keep it as is. And he's also talked about perhaps organizing a task force to revisit this subject and maybe make some proposals of what would be better, what would improve on that situation. But Republicans don't want to cave to the Democrats' demands. I don't blame them. I think that's the right position. But let's be honest, Republicans take advantage of these subsidies as well. Republicans welcome free money from the federal government as well. And I've made this point countless times that everybody says you go up there and cut that spending and be responsible, but be sure and send all that money to me. And you multiply that by the 535 that serve in Congress, and you end up with $37 trillion in debt. So that is definitely a concern that Republicans are calculating. And, of course, Republicans are trying to make the point, well, Democrats want to give free health care to illegals. And, by the way, they still will get free health care in the ERs because under our law, hospitals that participate in Medicare that also operate ERs cannot turn away anybody. Let's take a person who is a tourist and is visiting this country on vacation, and they have some sort of medical emergency, and they go to the ER. They're going to get health care, whether they pay for it or not. In fact, they wouldn't. They wouldn't have any American-accepted insurance, likely aren't going to pay cash. The hospital is going to absorb that, is what's going to happen. And the federal government is going to reimburse the hospital partially under the emergency Medicaid program that's been around for quite some time. And that's because hospitals are mandated to deliver such care and stabilize the patient under the EMTALA law, which was passed and enacted into law by President Ronald Reagan in 1986. So that's what's going on there. We're stepping aside for a break. When we come back, it's Jill Sanchez from SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
When I think back on all the crap I learned in high school.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's our pleasure to welcome now Jill Sanchez, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. All right, Jill, welcome in.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great.
That's
I think it's
good.
the first time you've been on Middays, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I got really nervous thinking about it, but I'm sure I'm going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how long have you been in the SuperTalk News Department now?
Ooh, I think, okay, if you don't count my internship that I did January.
Yeah.
I think it's probably been like a month or closer to 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome. Good to see you. What you got for us today? What are you tracking?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the Attorney General's office marked the 3rd anniversary of the resource platform Mama, which is it's a maternal assistance service that helps mothers and pregnant women all around Mississippi. And I just think it's great. Ever since it's launched itself in October 2023, the website itself got like 27,000 clicks and about 88,000 page hits on like the app and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really been helpful to all these women, and I just love to hear that.
Okay, so the fairs in town and people, anytime there are big gatherings of people in an open-air setting like that, folks are concerned about security. What are we doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Mississippi State Fair, increased a lot of security measures. I've never been to the State Fair. I think yesterday was the first time I've ever been.
Yeah.
And it was like you couldn't take more than 15 steps without seeing a police officer, which is always reassuring. I mean, that's the importance of it. Like, have fun, but be safe. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, it's just
so the security itself. Are we looking more at sheriff's department, the Capitol Police, Highway Patrol, all the above?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, State Fire Marshal, Jackson Police Department, Pearl Police Department. Mississippi Department of Wildlife and Fisheries and Parks. So, yeah.
So, usually, as I recall, you always see some of the sheriff's departments, the deputies, mounted on the horses, right? Mm-hmm. Did you see any of that?
Not that I've seen, but, like, I've definitely seen photos, but I didn't see it myself.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's good to know. I think that Ag Commissioner Andy Gibson, of course, who's responsible for that, I think he ordered up some heightened security measures just to make sure everybody can attend the state fair safely.
For sure. And I think it's really important that people know for a fact that they're going to be safe going into this. I know there's been a lot of concerns. I think that's one of the main reasons why I never attended, was because I know for a fact that a lot of people tell me, well, that's the place where you go for crime. And I feel like now that there's more of an increased security measures in general, it just feels like it's just nonstop fun from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. What about the Department of Health? What are they talking about with respect to Breast Cancer Awareness Month?
Yes. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and the Mississippi Health Department is urging women to get screenings for early detection, which is very important. Apparently, for women in Mississippi, breast cancer is like the main form of death. So that's obviously not a good thing. And not even just looking at the numbers, because it's 400 women in Mississippi each year, not even just looking at the numbers, looking at the people, it's really important to realize that that's still huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's too many.
Yeah.
And
early detection is very important.
So the Department of Health is promoting this idea?
Yes. They're having a breast and cervical screening from October 17th from 10 a.m. to 2. In the Trade Mart in Jackson.
Okay.
And the event is open to anyone who's uninsured or underinsured from the ages 21 to 64. There's pre-registration available at our website, and there's also a Know It to Beat It webinar series hosted by the Mississippi Comprehensive Cancer Control Program. It's a lunch and learn series. So, I mean, good food, but also very important information that people need to know.
Okay. So that's pretty good, though. So the Department of Health is actually conducting this event, and anybody can go and sign up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very important that people who are underinsured or just lack insurance and all of that get to go to these things. It's important that people know that health is first.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's good that the Department of Health is doing that. So the death of a high school student in Grenada, what do you got for us there?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me pull that up real quick.
Yeah.
Aiden Reno is a Grenada high school student, and he died September. Yeah, he was a 16-year-old high school student that was found dead Monday night. So there's an investigation that's going on that. I mean, it's unusual, obviously, anytime you have a high school student, someone so young pass away. Yeah, absolutely. They've already arrested at least 4 people already, and all of them were his classmates.
Arrested? So they think there's foul play here. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And all of them are his classmates, which makes it 10 times worse.
Man.
You think it's, you'd hear about these stories, I'd hear about these stories and think that it's these grown men, but no, it's his classmates, it's people around him every single day who saw him every single day, who probably saw him when he was younger.
Man.
Yeah, it's very tragic, and I hate to hear stuff like this, but, the most that people can do is really send their thoughts and prayers to not only him, but also his family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wrote an article about a Rankin County woman who is, I'm looking at the piece right here, facing some charges, right? She was, what did you say here? Led deputies on a chase that ended in a rollover crash yesterday afternoon?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically there was a disturbance call in her Flowood neighborhood or in her Rankin County neighborhood. And from then on she left the house, and she was already stopped around Flowood, and the police continued to tried to get her out of the vehicle, and she proceeded to just keep driving, just avoiding like law enforcement. And I just feel like that is the worst way to make a bad situation even worse, of just not listening to law enforcement.
Man. Yeah, that wasn't very smart. Just do what they tell you, and your troubles will be a whole lot less.
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Animal collisions are a big problem for motorists in the state of Mississippi. I can personally attest to that. I think everyone in my family has had that situation. It's expensive, but we just have deer in particular just roaming all over the place. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so Mississippi drivers are in like the top 8 of like states that are very high risk for animal collisions, and it's a new research from State Farm, and it's something that's very terrifying. I've never personally went through that, like, thank God. Yeah. But it does sound like it's a real issue. I've heard it like at like specific times during the month or during the year that like deers are like someone told me a cow
this
one
time of year in particular.
Yeah.
They're moving around. So.
Yeah, and I find that absolutely like terrifying. Like in that situation, it's very much a think fast situation.
A 1 in 77 chance of hitting an animal is what you reported there. That's incredible. Yeah. 26,000 animal-related wrecks reported in Mississippi from July 24 through June 25. It's a year. 2,000 a month.
Yeah, exactly. It's really like, I'm glad I just never had to go through any of those situations. But in that situation, like, it's hard to know that you have to retain your vehicle for sure, but then also there's an animal. Like, that's a living thing. It's kind of like, oh no, what do I do?
So in your article, you make some recommendations, tips to stay safe.
Yeah,
bullet points. What should we do there? Slow down, of course.
Yeah, there's slow down and obviously stay alert on the road. And there's use high beams when possible.
Okay,
when
so
possible.
you can see.
Yeah, for sure. And to brake firmly rather than to swerve into another lane. I know I've seen other people try to do this, not just with animal collisions. And then always, always, always keep your seatbelt on. That is something that's probably been preached upon since the beginning of time. Always keep your seatbelt on. That's very important.
Where I find it to be risky is when you're on roads, especially 2-lane roads, that don't have any shoulders. And the shrubbery, the trees, the tree line is just adjacent right up against the road. So the deer can hide in there and just without notice, boom, they pop out. That's what happened to me twice. Yeah. You can't see it. Even with your bright lights on, it's not like they're, several yards off the road itself. They're just hiding right there in the tree line.
It's like they timed themselves perfectly to an area where nobody sees you. And at that point, like, what do you do? Oh my gosh, it's terrifying.
So I love the photo you've got in the article, and of course you attribute that to the Mississippi Outdoor Stewardship Coalition, but it shows like a country road where a big buck is jumping the fence with about to impact a car approaching it there.
Yeah, for sure. I saw that and I was like,
that's perfect.
That's what we have. Yeah, it's terrifying to think that they just come out of nowhere.
That's exactly right. They don't know.
Yeah, and they expect us to move.
Yeah, well, they say they have a right. They were here before we were, right?
Yeah, so. That's a good point. That is a good point.
Jill Sanchez, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. Thanks for coming in, Jill.
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
it. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio, folks. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
You know about this colliding with a deer. You can be traveling down the interstates. I find this to be the case, particularly in North Mississippi when I'm going up to Oxford, up 55, or up to DeSoto County, Memphis, what have you. But there's a stretch in there where there's just an abundance of deer that are grazing out in the green area, But you got 20 yards or so, between the edge of the interstate and the tree line. So you can see them. So you could react if they come out. To some extent, you got more warning. And it is true, as Jill said in her article.
I shrug at that because I lost a side mirror to a deer on 220 one night.
Oh, that's weird. But
that was because I did manage to swerve and I didn't hit it.
Yeah.
It hit the mirror.
Yeah.
It literally ran into the front quarter panel and rolled against the mirror, and there goes the mirror.
Yeah. But you had a little bit of time to react and change your course slightly, which may have protected both your vehicle to some extent and the animal. But what I'm going with this is there's a 2-lane road that services the main entrance of my neighborhood, and there's sections of it that, like I said, you've got thick brush tree line foliage right up to the edge, no shoulder. I mean, they'll be in there with their nose just about hanging over, the road. And if they zip out, you can't react. You can't see. And that's what happened to me twice. I mean, in the same stretch of road. And I hate it because I certainly don't want to hurt the deer. Shooting them, hunting them is one thing, but crippling them to a long, protracted kind of existence is worse, honestly. So, Jeff in Forest County says, is it suggested filling out an accident report after hitting a deer? I've never done an accident report. But
pretty much only if you're going to file it on insurance to repair the vehicle.
Well, I've never had to do that. I'll file on my insurance, and it depends on the cost, right?
Yeah, it depends on the cost and depends on the insurance company.
And in general, with my insurance company at least, animal strikes do not affect your rates. That's not considered a fault. So,
I'm sure they would if you had about 7 in a year. But
yeah, but
they're not going to put up with. Hey, we've paid 4 times the value of that vehicle by now.
Stay off that road, right, or out of that car. So that's the way I've handled it. And of course, you've got a deductible to deal with and all that sort of stuff. And the same thing is true with windshield repairs when you. And I just had that, by the way, not so long ago, a big rock that just centered my dang windshield and made a star that is not repairable. We attempted to fill it in. It's just too extensive for that purpose. So necessitates, if I don't want to look through that star when I'm driving, to replace the windshield. But, yeah, so I guess we're blessed with an abundance of deer. It's a target-rich environment for hunting in our state.
Well, Ricky in Aberdeen said, hi, Gerard. Actually, in most parts of the state, we were here before the deer.
Okay.
And I would issue a minor correction of that. Yes, the people currently living where the deer are now, there are some that those people moved in before deer came back.
Okay.
But
gotcha.
There was a humongous deer population in the Magnolia State, and it got hunted down to a really low population kind of leading up to the Great Depression.
Okay.
And that didn't help a whole heck of a lot. But during the Depression, I believe, is when we got the Wildlife Department conservation efforts and stuff like that to bring the deer population back.
Okay.
And it's had its dips, but there are a lot more deer than there were a century ago.
Well, isn't it true? There are more deer. It has been reported. Thought that there are more deer in the state than people?
I don't know about that. I'll double check.
That would be what, north of 2.9 million. About 100,000 of them are in my neighborhood. I think it seems like.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
it? The deer population. What are you seeing there? More.
It seems to contradict itself.
Okay. Well, it's a bunch. We know that.
It seems to be about even at this point.
Okay. That's still a lot of deer.
1.5 to 2 million deer population.
Okay.
State's human population is 3, but there's margin of error in the deer population estimates, whereas we actually have a census for the people.
Interesting. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I know there are methodologies, right, that conservationists and scientists use to count the population, but that's probably a little less reliable, I would think, than the way we count people. Because you can't, call the deer and send them forms and things like that. On the C Spire text line, Ricky also said, I know when I was a kid, it was very rare to see a deer in Monroe County. Man, that's incredible because And I hear you. I get it, and I appreciate that, Ricky.
It's because of that overhunting in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was a severe risk of the Magnolia State losing its deer herd.
That ain't the case anymore, though. I've literally come home before my house. My driveway approaches my garage, which is in the back of the house, and there's a porch right there on the side. I've seen them up on my porch looking in the window. They're like domesticated in the neighborhood, frolicking about. Oh,
they just want to watch the tube with you.
Yes, that's exactly right. Oh, my gosh. Let's see. My wife hit one and killed in the middle of Carrollton at 7:20 a.m. week before last, says Thomas in Greenwood. Oh, man. Yeah, they're everywhere. Jason Starkville says, just take pictures. I guess he's talking about as far as a strike of an animal. And honestly, the way
there are a lot of insurance now, they don't even send somebody out.
That's exactly right.
Pictures of different angles and send it to them.
Yeah, do it on your app, on your phone, right? Boop, okay, here's your claim. Get that started.
Or maybe he's one of those people that goes and sits in a deer stand with a long camera lens, because I do know a couple people that do that. They used to hunt. They kind of got tired of having to keep their rifle sighted in and all that, and their kids and grandkids are hunting, so they're not really worried about the deer meat part of the process of hunting. So they'll go out there and they'll put their grandkids up in a stand, and they'll just take their camera out there and take pictures.
All over the place on the 601 here. I remember in the 70s and early 80s that if you heard of someone seeing a deer during deer season, that was big news. I remember that too. I agree. I mean, it was more common back then to go through a whole season and not even see one, right? Now it's, how many did you get usually? Now I sit on my front porch and drink coffee and watch deer send us a photo. That looks like a little buck there, doesn't it, Rhino?
Yeah.
In that photo? So,
in velvet.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I had to slam on brakes in my neighborhood a few nights ago. There's a family that crosses the street back and forth on this particular street that is near mine in my subdivision, and they're right there on the sidewalk. And man, I slow down and get worried that, oh shoot, all they got to do is get a wild hare, no pun intended, and boom, zip out in front of you. So I stop. I honk the horn. I'm not sure if that attracts them or runs them away.
There's a debate back and forth over whether or not that startles them and makes them freeze, or if it startles them and makes them run.
Kevin in Monticello says, a camera is easier to drag out of the woods than a deer. No doubt about that. But the cool thing is we have
I wasn't going to poke fun at my friends for being older and a little bit more out of shape, but that is a driving factor for them.
There's no doubt. But we have all these really cool off-road vehicles now, right? If you afford one of those.
4x4s and side-by-sides and all that fun stuff.
Pretty sophisticated, pretty useful, pretty powerful.
But then again, there are some people that still swear by stalking. They don't even get in a deer stand, and they'll stalk into some really thick brush that you could get it. You could drag the deer out of the brush to a more cleared area to get it on a four-wheeler, but you're going to have to drag it away.
Yeah, no doubt. But, of course, a very popular activity here in the state of Mississippi. They'll be coming up here in, month and a half, right? Deer season, the start. You got the youth season coming up first, right? And then followed by, it's usually the day after Thanksgiving. Isn't that typically?
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up so I can actually give the actual dates.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be good information there. So, a very popular activity in the state of Mississippi. We have an abundance of outdoor venues to hunt deer and, of course, birds. My son loves that duck hunting, man.
Yeah, October 1 was the start of bow season for either sex on private and public land, and then youth season starts November 8th.
Gotcha. And then the regular season would be later in the month.
And that's for the Delta, North Central, and the Hills Management Area in the Southeast. October 15th starts bow season for either sex on private and public land, and youth season again starts on November 8th.
There you go. Okay, the Dow up 506 points, off to the races today. Lots of news driving that. The NASDAQ has turned positive, but not by a whole lot, up 44 points. We're going to step aside for a break and come back and talk about something the president suggested yesterday regarding some mailbox money. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
Up of Mississippi.
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge news. Huge news. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
I got rice cooking in the microwave. Got a 3-day beard I don't plan to shave. And it's a goofy thing, but I just gotta say, hey, I'm a-doing alright. Yeah, I think I'll make me some homemade soup. Feeling pretty good, and that's the...
All right, we're back. Share with the folks this story you were telling me about offline about the teachers' union in New Jersey, right? They're striking back at their own organization there.
Yeah, teachers in New Jersey are suing the New Jersey Education Association is the big educator union in New Jersey. They're suing the union because the union supposedly spent $40 million of the teachers' dues to run a gubernatorial campaign for their then president, and he came in 5th.
Unbelievable. Wow. And they have a very interesting governor's race going on up in the Garden State right now. It's kind of back and forth between a general election approaches. So we've got the Republican candidate. Is that Jack Ciarelli, I think, is the Republican candidate. And I think it's Mikey Sherrill. Is that how that's pronounced? M-I-K-I-E?
I've heard Mikey. I've heard Mickey.
I have too. And I'm not sure what the correct pronunciation is. It's M-I-K-I-E, right? Yeah. Isn't that how it's spelled? And so last week, it was neck and neck. This week, it appears the Democrat has pulled ahead. She got some baggage, though, don't she?
Just a little bit.
God, dog.
Involved in a cheating scandal at the Naval Academy.
Yes.
And refuses to release any of the records, hoping that people will just take her word for it.
Please explain to me how someone like that gets to that level. Meaning, how the hell do they get to be the nominee for governor of a state in this country? Can't we get better people than that? I mean, can we just get honest people with some degree of competence to step up, run, earn a nomination? That's in short supply. It seems to be in short supply.
Well, I mean, if you take the more cynical viewpoint of politicians, it takes a certain level of narcissism or sociopathy to really be able to handle the political process at this point.
Yeah. That
and
seems
narcissistic
to be the case.
tendencies and sociopathy are not really a good foundation for a person of character.
Yeah. I think that seems to be the case for sure. So I did want to pass on that yesterday the president floated the idea of sending out some checks up to $2,000 in rebates. He says he'd use tariff revenue to send those checks out. I'm requesting of the president very respectfully, sir, please don't do that. We've already seen that movie, and it didn't end very well. And that's when checks were dropped out of helicopters. It was certainly one thing during the president's first term when he did that in 2020 as part of the CARES Act. But the whole country was shut down then. And so the inflationary effect of that wasn't as severe as it was when Joe Biden did it in 2021. And we, of course, denounced that because the country was on the move and back in business, and he couldn't deal with that because that would have meant President Trump would have been credited for the recovery. So
I think that's the way you would need to frame it to convince him, if anybody from the White House is listening, that Trump sent out stimmy checks, he didn't win. Biden sent out stimmy checks, he didn't win.
That's a good point. Yeah, so
I know he's not running again, even though the Trump 2028 joke hats are hilarious, but he likes to win. He's pretty sure he would want Vance to win, so frame it like that.
Well, we got a midterm coming up, and we want him to continue pressing forward with his agenda, and you won't be able to do that if we don't retain control of the House and of the Senate. So,
I mean, he's already getting slow-walked by Republican majorities in the House and Senate.
Totally correct. So I understand that his desire to provide some financial benefit to Americans from the revenues collected on tariffs, but in spite of those revenues, Mr. President, we're still set to produce a $2.2 trillion deficit. It would have been $2.4 trillion without tariff revenue if you just took the tariff revenue out of the equation. So we're not in a position yet to start just putting money out there.
I mean, in your household budget, if you got a raise, would it be smarter to pay off more on your debt or give your kids a raise on their allowance?
Yeah, exactly the same scenario.
As that analogy is, it's just not a good idea. Pay off the debt before you start throwing money away.
We're going to continue talking about this on the other side of the break. It's top of the hour. We've got Fox News and SuperTalk News coming your way. We've got the afternoon portion of Middays after that.
It's hard for thee to kick against the pricks. In measured 100-weight and penny pound, when the man comes around.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays. Super Talk Mississippi is live on this Friday, y'all. So, on the C Spire text lines, Gerard, Steve here. Lee County has a bush hog sort of machine. They cut all that brush away from the sides of roads. It's just a little ugly, so I'm sure many complain to them. We live on 80 acres in the middle of the local deer population's home, so we see them every day. Yeah, and in this case, and I was talking about this 2-lane road that intersects, I should say, with the main entrance into my neighborhood. So this is all private property, though, Steve. That's the difference. This brush, this tree line I'm talking about that kind of abuts the road, these are private residences and homes that are situated on lots of acreage. This is kind of the older part of Madison County before it started urbanizing in that direction. And so I don't think that the county would be permitted, or the city, because this is actually in the city limits, to just come start cutting trees down on folks' property there. And I don't know what all the agreements are on that, and my point was the deer are just often right in the edge of the tree line there, and you just have no time to react and you can't see them, you can't anticipate it. That's what happened to me twice. Happened to my wife and my son as well. So I think all of us have had. I will tell you though, when they start moving around, I avoid that road and go a little bit longer route home to stay off of it. And I hope no law enforcement people are listening to me, but I have known to go down that road at night, which is not very well traveled. It's not one that attracts a lot of traffic, especially at night. I'll drive in the middle of the road to give myself, like straddling the yellow line there just to try to give myself a little time to react in the event of deer flies out of either side. And I'm careful watching, of course, and it's kind of curvy, but I guess if I got pulled over for crossing the line
they're
there,
going to give you a sobriety test.
I'd have to explain what the heck's going on. And I know that I don't recommend that. I'm talking out of school here. That's not the way you should handle it. I know, but I don't want to hit a deer. So, and that's why I've gotten more frequently now to where I'll just avoid that and go a little bit longer route and stay off of that particular road. But it's always those sections where the trees are just right up against you on both sides that I worry, because that's where they came out and got me twice in a row there.
I've found it's a great way to stay awake on the trace at night. It's just the anxiety and the adrenaline of white-knuckling the steering wheel. And all right, at any moment, they're going to come out of the woods. It's like an ambush.
Well, that's another example, is it not, of a place in the state of Mississippi where there are an abundance of deer all over that dang trace. Of course, I was just in Tupelo earlier this week, traveling during the day. But you still see
them. It's a little bit easier in the day.
It's easier in the day.
See a little bit farther.
But you still see them. I saw several, both going up and coming back, because I don't know how. I think I'm on the trace there for about 50 miles once the route I take off of 82 up to Tupelo. So, and by the way, it's beautiful this time of year up there, isn't it? It really is incredible. It's just hard to believe that sort of desolate, unpopulated area right smack dab in the middle of the state like that.
Well, the really trace is a bit deceiving as far as its wild nature, because there are many spots on the trace where if you just parked and walked perpendicular to the trace about a half mile, you'd be in civilization again.
That's right. But you can't tell that when you're traveling on the two-lane road of the trace. You're right. Because there's overpasses, right, where you pass over the intersecting roads that are leading to these communities you're talking about that are just not far off the beaten path there. So, yeah, but really beautiful across our state. And I can't help but when I'm traveling it thinking about how old that really is, and all the history behind the scenes on that. It's pretty neat when you think about it.
It's real cool to stop at the little turnoffs where they have the actual old trace.
Yes.
Where you can see over years and years and decades of wagons and horses and people. It's just sunken earth. There's just like this gully with trees on the sides of it, and nature is reclaiming it because it's not used as much. But yeah, it takes a lot of people, a lot of wagons, and a lot of horses to dig a trench 6 feet deep.
You're and to your point about nature kind of reclaiming it, it's narrowed it as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
It was wider at
not
one
by
point.
much, but yeah, it was a little wider.
Yeah. But just, I don't know, something to me that's intriguing is just to think about there were people a long time ago that were in this exact spot, right, in our state. And here we are in modern times. I don't know. It's kind of neat just to consider. On the C Spire text line, at dark you see headlights, says Mike from Columbus. Yeah, sure. That's absolutely true. I still worry about them dang deer, just what causes them to just move about and fly across the road there. Certainly a concern. The Dow, by the way, just crossed 47,000 first time in history. So your investments are looking good there, folks. That's also good for the public employees retirement system. I think there's a lot of optimism in the investment community about this AI revolution that's largely driving much of the gains we're seeing. All the indexes presently in the green, the Dow by the most today. Lots of news driving that. I think I saw Caterpillar accounts for about 40 points. They had some positive news this morning about the company. Lots of optimism. So before we went to break was talking about the president considering sending out some rebate checks up to $2,000 using tariff revenue. And again, though the tariff revenue it has certainly been welcome on that part of the income statement to the Treasury. It's not that much money, unfortunately, in the scheme of things. So about $250 million has been collected so far this year. Expected calendar year expected that we're going to hit the $300 billion point. And that's, again, welcome, but when you got a $2.2 trillion deficit, that's 15% of the deficit, and you're spending $7 trillion. So, unfortunately, that's about 0.5% of that, of total spending. Certainly not sufficient, in my view, to send out rebate checks. We're not in a surplus situation. We're still in a deficit situation. We're still borrowing money. I think last calculation I did, Rhino, there, it's about $70,000 a second that we borrow. I think I did the math right on that. I'd have to probably cross-check it. But that's a bunch of money, and we're certainly not in a position yet to say, okay, we're in good shape. Let's send out money to the people. We got more than we can spend. If we got to that situation, I'm all for it, but I'd be more for permanent tax cuts rather than, as a result of that, rather than one-time payments to people. I think that would ignite inflation. I think it just gets people accustomed to, the federal government's going to just send money out randomly. I don't think it makes sense to do that because we're borrowing money to send that money. I know the president says, yeah, we're using tariff revenue, but it all goes into the same pot, and we're still producing a deficit. So you're taking away some of that tariff revenue that is helping to curtail deficits, though there's still $2.2 trillion is where we stand right now. So I would certainly encourage the president to reconsider that. He also said that tariffs are just kicking in. I'm quoting him. They're just starting to kick in. This was during an interview on One American News Network. Quote, but ultimately your tariffs are going to be over $1 trillion a year. Man, if that happens, that's triple the run rate we're on now. That means significant tariffs, but it also means we're not bringing industry back into this country because that means we're still importing a lot, still have trade imbalances, still sending our money to foreign countries, still not domesticating lots of goods and services here in the country if we got to this $1 trillion level. And he also indicated, and I'm not sure exactly where he's getting this from, he also indicated that we're paying off debt right now. He, quote, with that being said, we'll pay back debt, but we also might make a distribution to the people. And so we're not really, honestly, remotely close to getting to the point where we could pay off debt with $37 trillion of it and $2.2 trillion of deficit. So I certainly hope the president and his inner circle rethink that and decide not to do that. I welcome getting to the point where we can. However, we're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Think for a moment about
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Is that
Muse?
Oh my God! I guess I'm out of touch. Did you dig deep on that, or is that like big time?
It's almost 20 years old. It came out in 2006.
Wow! Okay.
It was on Guitar Hero. It's what really kind of popularized it for a lot of people.
I got you. Ricky in Aberdeen says, I know several reports from the government are not coming out because of the shutdown, one of them being the unemployment report that was scheduled to come out today. That's right, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Are there any others you know of that could possibly affect the stock market? Well, it turns out that the market, at least right now, is shrugging off that report didn't come out. I think the other thing they've learned, something we talked about countless times, is you can't rely on those dang reports. I mean, they come out today, and
a different way of looking at it is, well, they can't screw it up, so
that's right.
Go for it.
That's right. I think, honestly, Ricky, that missing a week doesn't concern people. That a lot of these analysts are talking to businesses, executives, management. The job market's a little sluggish right now. A lot of it is underemployment, that we've got people who don't possess the skills to fill the jobs. So there's no doubt that there's some degree of hesitation on the part of employers to bring on more staff. There's still a lot of question about tariffs and just other economic factors. The macroeconomy, consumer spending, optimism, all that sort of stuff, figuring into employment plans. But there's also a big issue in that we just don't have the people that have the skills to fill the jobs that are, in fact, available. Now, that's nothing new, but it seems to have been intensified to a great extent, I would say, because we figured out a way to automate a lot of the jobs that people do have skills for. And so I do agree with the Secretary of Labor when I said earlier, I'm not sure why we have a Department of Labor. I do agree with her statement she made this morning, which is we've got to understand that our workforce needs to be upskilled and reskilled to take on the jobs of the future. I totally agree with that. And she made the point that she wants government to promote the idea that businesses need to be in tune with the AI revolution and just the technology revolution in general to ensure that their organizations and their teams can handle these new technologies and this new way of doing business. They're totally right. It's nothing new. I think what's different, Rhino, is that the cycle times between these evolutions of new technologies continues to shrink because of technology and our ability to escalate and accelerate the rate at which new technologies are infused into the market and the workplace in general. So I think that's what's happening there. In other words, you got to be agile, you got to react, you got to embrace change. You can't wait, and you can't rest. Okay, we got that one done. Let's take a rest. No, here comes the next one. That's what's happening. And that's a good thing because it typically equates to productivity, and productivity is the only way to create wealth. So we should certainly embrace that. So I applaud the Secretary of Labor for understanding that is a need in our country, in our society, in the business landscape overall. So the biggest contention between Republicans and Democrats in terms of just the money and the dollars associated with it to get the government back open is the enhanced ACA tax credits. Now, it turns out that in a recent KFF, Kaiser Family Foundation, I would consider them the foremost authority on health care policy. They just conducted a poll. Take it for what it's worth. It's one organization conducting a poll. I think 1,000, if I'm not mistaken, Americans were polled September 23rd through the 29th, so just last week. 59%, of Republicans, this shocked me a little bit, want to extend the enhanced tax credits. 82% of independents, 92% of Democrats No surprise there. So it's worth noting that the majority of Republicans would like to see these enhanced tax credits extended. And as I said earlier, I think what it comes down to, we've become so accustomed to the federal largesse, regardless of our party affiliation, regardless of our worldview, our principles, our philosophy of government. If the federal government can make our cost of living cheaper, we're for it. Unfortunately, because there's a short-term benefit that's paid for with long-term consequences. So this was a little disappointing. Also, they asked folks to identify as to whether or not they were a MAGA supporter or a non-MAGA supporter. 57% of MAGA supporters want to extend the enhanced ACA subsidies. We shared earlier in the program that there's rumor, at least, some support for it, according to the Wall Street Journal, that the president's inner circle in the White House are communicating to the president that this particular issue, the enhanced ACA subsidies, is something that could affect the Republican Party in the midterms if they are not extended. They are scheduled to expire at the end of the year, enacted into law in early 2021, right after Joe Biden took office, in the American Rescue Plan. It's just so hard, isn't it? I mean, I think that's the message here. When you provide these sorts of benefits, it's just hell to take them away. It just is. And that's what's happening. It's estimated that for the 24 million who receive ACA Marketplace premium tax credits, subsidies, their premiums would rise by 114% on average. And I feel confident that every Republican sitting in the Congress that goes back home to conduct a town hall, if these enhanced subsidies are allowed to expire, is going to get an earful, including from Republican constituents. I don't support this. I just know I'm thinking human nature. Human nature is, wait, we elected you to make our cost of living go down, and I just got my insurance notice, and my premiums doubled. That's not what you said. And that's the conundrum, because they're having to deal with bad policy from the Biden administration. Should have never happened. Should have never happened in the Obama administration in 2010. It all goes back to that. By the way, because of the enhanced subsidies, the enrollment in the marketplaces doubled since 2021, from 12 million to 24 million. Well, of course, because it's cheaper. It's free for a good number. And those for which it's not free, incomes above 150% of the federal poverty level, their out-of-pocket costs reduced substantially. This is what's crazy. I'm going to share this again. It's a second-order thinking. We're borrowing money to the tune of 46 cents of the dollar to give these subsidies. We can't afford it. I sure wish somebody would speak up and talk about that and say, yeah, we're going to have to end this because we're borrowing money like crazy. Everybody's got a sacred cow. Don't touch mine. Just deal with them. Not me, though. So that's what's at stake here. And that's what Republicans and Democrats are grappling with. It's also why you're hearing lots of rumblings from the right side of the aisle from Republicans. Yeah, I think we're on board with extending these enhanced subsidies either in total or in some part. But I agree with the Speaker and Republicans in their message to Democrats. Guys, let's reopen the government and then let's gather up in the Capitol and let's debate this issue and come out with something that everybody can live with. That makes sense to me. But they're drug in the intransigent Chuck Schumer. The Speaker calls it the Schumer shutdown. We're coming right back with half an hour of Middays from the Element Well studio.
From the Seabrook.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Thanks so much for joining us today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar. You'll hear an interview with author Randy Harrington. And don't forget, high school football. Man, those guys do a great job with the coverage. You can catch a local game on just about every SuperTalk Mississippi station. Plus, you can stream a ton of games and get up-to-the-minute scores from across the entire state by going to supertalk.fm/high school or by clicking on sports on the SuperTalk Mississippi app. And don't forget to check out the Farm Bureau Insurance Company Scoreboard Show at 10 p.m. on Friday nights, anywhere you listen or watch SuperTalk Mississippi. So, on the C Spire text line, good morning and great show. With the jobs cuts coming, that was from earlier today. Yeah, here we go. With the jobs cuts coming and the big push for AI in the country, what do you guys think will happen to the job market? And do you guys worry about the goal of Project 25 putting all government agencies under the executive branch? Well, the first thing I would say is I'm not worried about AI just diminishing every job in the country or a large number of jobs. I think it will affect virtually every job ultimately. And I tend to align with Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, who said, your job's not going to be taken by AI. It's going to be taken by somebody who's using AI. I absolutely believe that. I see it as a tool. Are there some jobs that AI can perform? Absolutely. Are there jobs, Rhino, that automation technology, computers perform that are a thing of the past now? Absolutely. This is no different. But are there not going to be a massive amount of opportunities for people to create these technologies, apply these technologies? Heck, I know I've shared this before. You and I played around with prompts. You're better at it than I am, and you just did an exercise on the deer population situation. We should tell the folks about that, where Google's Gemini said, yeah, it looks like there's about 1.5 to 2 million deer in the state and 3 million people. Yeah, there are more deer than there are people. Like, wait, that math doesn't
quite work.
But I said, why don't you do the same prompt to ChatGPT and to Grok? And they both got it right.
Yeah, they got it right. It's Google's AI that struggled.
But we should point out, ChatGPT and Grok, they get stuff wrong too.
Oh, yeah, Grok's gotten pretty bad about it in the last couple of months.
So it's a great tool to kind of get you started. I've had situations where I've used prompts to summarize legislation or summarize policy, and it'll do so with legislation that didn't pass, right? Yeah. Or that's been amended or replaced. So you got to be careful. But, gosh, does it save some time? Absolutely. Orders of magnitude of time. So I guess I'm saying all that to just say that I believe there are going to be lots of jobs of the future that aren't even a twinkle in the eye today. And that a lot of kids born today, for the most part, will work a job that hasn't been invented yet. I think that's where we're headed. So... and honestly, if AI replaces these jobs, that means we're so dang productive, we're wealthy as hell is what it means, which would be a great thing. So I don't see any downside to that. As far as putting all the government agencies under the executive branch, most of them actually are. I mean, there are some that aren't. that are under the legislative branch. One that comes to mind is the Congressional Research Service, the Smithsonian. There's some other stuff, but all the major agencies that are headed by cabinet secretaries, they're already in the executive branch. By the way, the biggest employer.
Should we shave some of those? Yes.
Absolutely. I've been talking about that this morning, but last I checked, they're like 400 when you consider, right, all the sub-agencies. The one with the largest number of employees, Veterans Affairs. Veterans Affairs. Now, do we absolutely owe it to our veterans to serve them with the various services the federal government provides? Absolutely. 100%. They're the ones that served their country, sacrificed, in many cases, part of their career, their time, and often, of course, they were put in harm's way, risked their very lives, and are subject to that any day of the week. So, of course, it makes sense.
It's more of an indictment on the VA itself if you have the most people and you still provide subpar service.
That's absolutely correct in where I was going. So it's not a question as to whether or not the government, in my view, should be providing these services to our precious veterans. The problem is they're not just doing as good a job as they could. It's improved, and I think the president has done some things to improve that. In his prior term, you remember, he changed the way medical services are delivered, where, hey, look, if you can get better service or whatever you need from a specialist that is not part of the veterans healthcare complex, let's do it and pay for it, right? So, yeah, that makes sense. We want our veterans to have available to them the best care possible. They freaking deserve it. But you're right. That doesn't mean we should just check that box and say, yeah, we can't get any better at that. And it also doesn't mean that it doesn't have some bloat in terms of employees, right? You know that's the case. So we need to be careful there because we don't want to diminish any of those services. That's a little different than some of the more obscure organizations that really don't provide anything that's tremendously valuable to American taxpayers. So that's my thought about it. I don't know about the Project 25. I haven't really read that. I do know that there was some push, I guess, in that model to empower the executive branch more than the legislative branch in terms of the federal government complex itself. I do know that, and I'm not sure I have necessarily a problem with that. I actually think here in the state of Mississippi, maybe some more of the state's operations ought to be accountable to the executive branch. I think we'd have better outcomes and more efficient government service in that respect. So why can't we get the VA right? Man, that's on the C Spire text line.
Because it's government.
Yeah, it's
government's going to be inefficient. Government's going to be bloated. Government's going to be a waste of tax dollars to a certain extent, no matter which agency you're talking about, which branch you're talking about. If it has federal government stamped on its rear end, it's not going to be nearly as efficient as free market private entities.
Entrenched bureaucracy, and a lot of it, as you know, is just legacy. Well, we've always done it that way. Yeah, but there's better ways. Well, we've just always done it that way, and that's normally what you get. And I'm just watching the clock, waiting for retirement, right? I don't want to upset the apple cart, as the saying goes, and have to work to maybe improve the processes and the services delivered. Patrick from Tennessee says, like you said, once they get on the taxpayer teat, it is impossible to get them off. I, for one, do not want any part of those subsidies. And I was just talking about the risk of not extending in some form or fashion, if not in total, maybe some component of the enhanced, some watered-down version of the enhanced subsidies in the ACA because, yeah, it turns out Republicans avail themselves to the government's free money as well. And I don't blame them. I mean, if it's available and it's law and you're legitimately entitled to it, sure, everybody wants to drive down their household expenses, and that's one way to do it. and I'll use something that's used in sales as a sales technique. Rhino, you may have heard of this. It's called the puppy dog sale technique. Basically says, you know, you're with the kids at the pet store, and there's a puppy in the window, and the kids are, Dad, Mom, can't we take the puppy home? No, we really can't afford a puppy, and we really don't have the means to take care of it. And the salesperson from the pet store says, take it home for the weekend. Try it out. Guess what? It ain't coming back. Same deal, right? You could equate this as tantamount to the puppy dog sale. Here, Americans have these generous subsidies, but don't get too used to them. We're going to pull them back in 4 years. That's hard. And Republicans are going to get blamed for that because they're the ones, but like I said, they're the ones that are standing in the way of extending them permanently. But like I said, there are many Republicans that are saying, yeah, we'd like to talk about that, and maybe we end up with something in between, a compromise between the full extension and no extension of these subsidies. It's just talking about it from a political perspective, not an economic perspective. Economically, guess what? Once again, we can't afford it. We're broke. Final segment after this break.
Friday nights just got Talk Mississippi. Matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. Super Talk Mississippi.
They like to play that one in the stadiums. You're supposed to be hopping around, huh?
That was actually a dare from Dan in Hattiesburg. He dared me to play Sandstorm.
Okay, gotcha. Love it. Jerry in Waynesboro says, look at the stock market. Let's just keep it shut down for a while. Laugh out loud. Yeah, I don't think it's because it's shut down. I think there's just lots of optimism about this AI revolution. I really do. You're seeing companies invest heavily. Companies are reporting success. Some are saying that they're still searching for that return. But overall, keep in mind we're just getting started here. And there's not a company out there that's going to say, yeah, we just hadn't figured out a way to derive some value from it. No, they're all investing. And it doesn't mean there won't be some false starts and starting and stopping and pivoting.
We already had those.
Yeah.
McDonald's with their pilot rollout of the AI drive-thru where people were getting to the window and your bill is $3,000. Why? Because it put 2,000 ketchup packets and after the first 100 it started charging you.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
You're absolutely right. That's an interesting take on that. So, let's see. The veterans could probably get better service to their local doctor, says Mose. Maybe the VA should be an insurance provider. Yeah, I've thought about that as well. But again, that's turning around the Queen Mary there, isn't it, Rhino? I mean, it's just so entrenched the way it is. William and Brandon says, I've noticed a marked improvement in VA healthcare since Trump appointed this man. He's very interactive on Twitter with updates and had even answered my questions before, and that would be VA Secretary Doug Collins. Agree. A former congressman from the great state of Georgia. I agree with you, William. I've always been impressed with the congressman. Now the secretary. I think Trump hit a home run when he selected the Secretary Collins to lead Veterans Affairs. He is a veteran himself. Understands their needs, seems to be very accessible. You know, Rhino, when I did the show from the White House, he did do some interviews, a couple of interviews with some of the other outlets there. We weren't able to talk to him, but I got to shake his hand and meet him, and he's a delightful person. I think he's very competent. So I agree. It's good to hear, William. I'm glad to know that. And there's no question that President Trump is committed to ensuring our veterans get the absolute world-class best service. I don't know that I could say that, honestly, about Biden or Obama, that always seem to kind of keep the military at arm's length. It's almost like begrudgingly, right, supported or championed the needs of our military. Like goes against the grain of the left in this country, does it not? That's why I always question every time Biden spoke, he would always end by saying, God bless our troops. Like, where'd that come from? That doesn't really match his narrative, in my view.
Yeah, just talk to any global war on terror veteran about the rules of engagement changes under Obama and how much of a nightmare that was.
Yeah, completely
Unless
agree.
they're obviously angry looking and holding a weapon and pointing at you and shooting at you, you're not allowed to even point your gun.
So true. On the C Spire text line, this is a good report here. Not arguing against any common opinions, but the VA has been very good to me. Everything from medicine to therapy. That's great to hear. It really is. And
in fairness, I've heard a lot of good things about the VA in Mississippi. I've heard a handful of bad things, but a lot of good things about the VA in the Magnolia State. It just seems like across the country, they're not experiencing the same.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Inconsistent, maybe, is the way to put it, right? I think, and this is a good report here, and we could probably get 5 that are negative. But we want them all to be good. That's the point here. These veterans certainly deserve it. On the C Spire text line, talking about the ACA subsidies and the enhanced subsidies scheduled to expire without action at the end of the year. And looks like some Republicans are indicating a little chink in the armor. However, you've seen this probably, Rhino. The Freedom Caucus in the House says, nope, no way. We are not going to support extension of these subsidies or any form of extension of the subsidies, not whether it's in total, in their complete form as they exist right now, or even some reduced amount. This person says, I know some people that took early retirement because the ACA insurance was so cheap. This will put them back to work for sure. Interesting. So I can't imagine that's a whole lot, honestly, because that would also mean these are people whose age is under 65. They haven't attained that age level, because then you're on Medicare, which would be cheaper. So that's interesting. Finally, something we didn't talk about today, but we have a lot on this show, is Larry in my says, I talked to my state representative yesterday. That would be Mark Tullis. He didn't seem too optimistic about school choice passing. And I would say this, Larry, once again, it depends on what specific school choice policies. We're talking about just public-to-public transfer, use of public funding to go to a private school or homeschool, charter school, or universal choice. That's really what we've got to dig into. We'll be back with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.